Hi folks, Jim Thompson and Douglas Mackenzie here again with another episode of My Life with Robert Burns. Hi Jim.
Hi Douglas, hi everybody.
We're talking to another of our cronies from around the Burns world. Today our guest is a guy who's a well-known performer, certainly around the south and the west of Scotland. Many Burns suppers over many years. Cronies everywhere. Please welcome John Caskie, MBE.
Hi Douglas, hi Jim. Thanks very much for inviting me on here today. I feel very honoured, I feel very privileged. I've watched many of your podcasts and I've thought they've all been excellent. I've taken something from every one that I've watched. And to get the call for yourself, Douglas, to come on was just a buzz, and in a kind of pandemic when everybody's thinking for things to do and looking for something different, you certainly come up with something, and well done to you and Jim. And as I said, what a great honour to even be thought of to come on and give my talk on my life and myself and my life with Robert Burns. So thanks to you for inviting me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Well, if you've watched a few of them, you'll know that the way we always start is we just ask you if you'll tell us a little bit about yourself.
I can certainly do that. I'm John Caskie. I was born and brought up in Dumfries, and I stay just 4 or 5 miles out of Dumfries in Locker Briggs. Been born, bred, and been here all my days. Went to the local primary school that's maybe 100 yards round the corner, and then on to Dumfries High School in the town. And I think I would put my hand up and say that schooling wasn't always great for me. I did what I could, tried my best, but it maybe wasn't as good as some of the other folk. I didn't leave school with any qualifications or anything because I maybe just thought other things. But I was maybe lucky because when I left school, it was 1979, and I didn't mean to be political, but it was the time when the Callaghan government, the 3-day week, they went their discontent. The election had been that month, Thatcher had got in, and we were leaving the school. There was not getting any work for us. But I wanted to get into catering, and I walked through my high school one night down the street. I walked into about 5 hotels in Dumfries to ask if they had a job for a trainee chef or something. No, sorry, son. No, sorry, son. Got to the county hotel in Dumfries, and the manager was actually at the reception desk. He says, we're looking for somebody. You want to bring your mum and dad in, or come and speak to me through the week? I'll get the head chef. And I left the school on the Thursday, and I started working the Monday. And it means for other people that I was at the school with, some of them were out of work for months. So I found very fortunate, very lucky. And I did my training at the county hotel, the trainee chef, and completely out of the blue, we got word that the county hotel had been sold to Marks and Spencers that were going to buy the land and open the shop. And I found myself out of work. But I went to the job centre and seen there was a job at the hospital. So I finished work at the county one Friday and started the following Monday at the hospital. And I retired from there about 4 years ago. I worked my way up to be the head chef at the hospital. So for somebody in my era, leaving the school when there wasn't a lot of work, I found myself very lucky that I was never out of work. I finished up at a kind of hard time about 5 years ago. My dad had dementia. The whole family were looking after him. Dad sadly passed away, and a new hospital getting built in Dumfries, and they were looking for. And I thought, I think I've done my turn here. So I spoke to HR, took the pension package, and thought, right, I'll go. I'm not saying I'm never ever going to work again, but now I've got so much work with hobbies and things like that. But from a career point of view, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Starting off as a wee trainee that didn't know anything about cooking, to work myself through to be the head chef at the hospital for about 8 years before I did retire. It was just great fun. Lots of hobbies. Football. I was a football referee for 30 odd years. Because of that, I didn't have a football team, so I supported the Scottish national team. And along with my cousin, we travelled throughout the world to see Scotland play. And the trips were great. Some of the games and the results weren't just brilliant, but we had great times. And I've been in places that I would never ever have dreamt that would ever be. Music, Scottish music in particular. Scottish song, Scottish dance has brought me great fun and hobbies. And I helped to comparing the Isle Steps Accordion Club 35 years ago. I'm still doing the job yet, and now the secretary there. I run a wee old-time dance class that's been going for 25 years. Singing, I just love singing, entertaining, and to me it doesn't matter if I'm singing in a care home with 6 folk in a living room or in a big concert hall with 300 or 400 folk. I just love entertaining and singing. And another thing that I love is being part of my community, not just here in Locher Briggs, where I'm the chairman of the local hall, but also in Dumfries. We have a festival every year called Good Neighbours, and I was invited to be part of that maybe 10 years ago, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And I'm now the chairman for my sins for the past 3 years. So it's past 5 years. Sadly, the past 2 have been cancelled due to COVID, but hopefully we'll be bouncing back. So hobbies, many and varied, and work and career, and I think that's enough to be going on with it now. But I enjoy everything I do, and I put my heart and soul into everything, and maybe that's how I didn't get on at school, because it wasn't of great interest to me. I went to college, excelled with my stuff at college. My refereeing career, I put everything in, made loads of friends in refereeing. I think I could count my enemies in one hand, but the friends, God, would be here a long time. Music, put everything, self-taught as a singer or that, not any training, but just love. I think I'm standing there, there's a song, and there's only me, so I've got to tell that story. And that is the same in Burns speak, but also in some of these care homes. You get you see some of these old souls, God love them, and I'm there singing My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean, or I'll Be Your Sweetheart, to tell them the story. And just to see them, their faces lighten up, that means the world to me. And again, with the dance class, I thought we would run the dance class for maybe 6 or 8 weeks. 25 years later, we're still going, and we have great fun, and we're like a wee family now. And I say to them at the dance class, we're a family. When one's happy, we're all happy. When one's sad, we're all sad. And we just, everybody just, we're not there, it's no competition. We're there for fun, and it's great. And the same with the community, the hall, we've got a great committee at the hall. We're up to our eyes now, risk assessments, and try to get everything to reopen. We've been shut for a year, but we'll get open, it'll bounce back, and just to be part of the community, can't be anything better.
Tremendous. Let me take you back, because you've covered a huge amount of ground there. Let's go back to the catering. What's your favourite dish?
Oh no, I don't know. It just depends. I love creamy sauces and making creamy things, whether it's a chicken and a cream and wine sauce, or a pork and a cream and brandy or something. I like getting cream involved in the things, but I like to be kind of adventurous and try different things. I've tried them, they didn't work, but then I try other things and they do. And I was never a baker, but now that I'm now working in during the pandemic, they've been baking quite a bit and quite enjoyed that. But that's just a change. I mean, we had to bake an odd thing, but I mean, I had an aunt that was a baker and a right master baker, she was, but I've never ever gotten into that league. But when it comes to a certain dish, I don't know, as long as there's some cream or some nice herbs or something in it, it would be nice.
And did you have to cater for big events at all in your career?
Well, when I started at the county, I was a trainee, and I went day release to the local college, which was great, because you were meeting in with different folk. You were meeting in folk that came to a wee care home with 10 residents. You were meeting folk like myself in a big hotel. There was people at the hospitals, people at the college, and we met everybody. So that was fine. There were lots of big dinner dances in these days at the county hotel. In fact, I used to carry the haggis in at the Dumfries Burns Club Burns Supper before I ever knew what the Dumfries Burns Club or what a Burns Supper was. We used to carry the haggis in. And then when I moved to the hospital, we used to do a lot of catering there. The local doctors, the BMA, they had Burns Suppers, they had big events, and we would have them in our dining room, or there was the, excuse me, Easterbrook Hall was just up the way they used to have functions up there. So we catered for them. So although the hospital catering was completely different, we did get some big events to do as well. And they were always great fun, and you met in with a lot of folk.
So you said you're a football referee. Any big matches that you can tell us about?
I was, because of my shift pattern, I was never ever going to be the top, and because I couldn't commit. So I was always refereeing in amateur league and refereeing schools games, and I got a lot of pride and pleasure out of that. And again, it didn't bother me whether I was appointed to a game in the bottom of the second division or the top game in the first division, and I got my share. And same with schools, and because I refereed a lot of school games, I was at Hampden as a linesman in the under-18 Scottish Schoolboys Cup, and referee for Dumfries, and myself and another guy were on the line that day. That was a great honour. I was at Somerset Park, refereed a Scottish Schools Cup final up there. The old Stirling Albion's old ground, Anfield, I can say I refereed the last game there, because I refereed an under-15 Scottish Schoolboys game, team for Dundee, team for Motherwell, and the bulldozers were sitting outside of the park because they were coming in the next morning. So these were kind of highlights. So I refereed a few games in Ayrshire in the Scottish Amateur Cup, the West of Scotland Amateur Cup, and it was always great. You went there and somebody didn't know. I remember going to Kilmarnock one particular day, and I'm maybe carrying a bit of weight, and I got there, and this guy says, "Hey, who's the referee of the day?" I says, "Oh, he says, you are Yomo can run." I said, "We'll take you out 100 years." And I think at the end of the game, he realised that I could maybe get a bit more than he maybe looked as if I could. But great laughs and everything. And, you know, last year, I don't know what is going on, but I had a wee kind of health scare. And then after it, while I was in hospital last year, one of the women that was nursing me, her man, I used to referee him, and he was always saying, always asking how you're getting on, take care. And I sat one night and I wrote down all the kind of grounds locally where I'd refereed in Dumfriesshire. I mean, there was places in Sanquhar and Kirkconnell, and then you were away down in Galloway, Dalbeattie and Castle Douglas, away down to Langham and to Lockerbie and Moffat. So I wrote all these places down, and I thought, you know, when I get out of this hospital and I'm fit, I'm going to go run around. Some of these places are housing developments now because the pitch is no there. And I went 3 weekends running. I think there was 63 areas that I got. And I'd even phoned beforehand. So I was meeting with some of these guys. "Oh, come into the clubhouse and get a coffee. Or my favourite side's next door. I'll be there." Chat the door. And it was just great. And these were some of the folk I'd sent off, and they thought I was a big useless, you know what. But to see them, and that's just what it was about. For 90 minutes, I had a job to do, and I didn't have any friends. But the minute that final whistle went, and I always tell a lovely story about the refereeing, was one of the boys locally asked for a lift to the game, and we were playing Lockerbigs to Catering, maybe 5 mile, and he was sitting in my dyke when I went out, and he jumped into the car and we got there, and the game went. In the first half, he had terrible tackles, so I booked him. That was fine, and the referee supervisor was actually watching me that day and said, "You know, think you should have sent the boy off?" And I says, "I think he's on something today. I'll get him later on." Just ha ha ha. Well, 5 minutes into the second half, I just kind of shut my eyes. I seen the tackle coming, so I put him out and I got the red card out, and I says to him, "You're being ordered off of the field of play." He says, "You please yourself, what you want to do, as long as I get a lift home." And to kind of at the end of the game, he was sitting in the bonnet of the car waiting, and that was it. For 90 minutes, we weren't friends, but no, great times. I mean, it was a great hobby. And I did notice in one of your podcasts, you had Angus Middleton on, and any time when we're Angus, we always reminisce because we refereed at the same time. And I think I went to a game in Ayrshire to referee, and Angus was refereeing in the pitch next to us, and we were getting changed together. And just a small world, 20 years later, we met up through Robert Burns. So, no, football was great.
Very good.
In particular.
You talked also about a lot of the volunteer work you do, and you got awarded your MBE for some of that community work, didn't you?
Aye, I did indeed. That was a great honour. It was the 2018. I'd been out singing at an old folks thing, and then I went to a concert at Langham at night and came home and pile of letters through the door. in this room for the Cabinet Office. And I've said this as often, it said at the bottom that the Prime Minister was minded to recommend to the Queen that you go forward in the New Year's honours list for a MB, and it said for services to the community of Dumfries. And you kind of read that line, for services to the community of Dumfries, and I thought, you can't serve a community if the community is not there. So I was honoured and delighted to get the MBE, but I only got it because all these folks supported anything I had. Because they come to the Accordion Club, because they come to my dancing, because they come to the community hall, because they come to all the things. So you can be an organiser and you can be it and get recognised for it, which is very nice. But I never ever forget that I could only serve the community because the community supported me. I hope that makes sense what I'm trying to get. I was getting the award for the community being what they were. And it was lovely. We had a day at Buckingham Palace with my family, and it was just a lovely day.
And who presented the award to you?
It was Prince Charles.
Uh-huh.
I was told it wouldn't be the Queen, but we didn't know when we got there. And we got there, and it was my two brothers and my sister and I. And it was quite surreal because you got this big long staircase together, and then they say that the guests go to the left and the recipient goes to the right. And you kind of went one way, they went the other, and I looked behind me, thought I was going to wait in the electric chair as if I was never going to see them again. And we were in this room, and I still didn't know. And people were coming in, and it was great. There was folk that the first police officer that was on the scene at the Manchester bombing was there. A guy that had started selling sweets for his shed years ago in Stoke, it's now got a kind of empire. He was getting an award. There was all folk for places, and they were all mingling, talking to one another. And then there was a kind of chap on the table, I think it was the Lord Chamberlain, came forward to tell us how the ceremony worked. And it was only then that he told us it was going to be Prince Charles. And he was very, very nice. I mean, I walked through, and you could see when you walk through, kind of somebody leans forward and tells them, but he said to me, you're involved with lots in your community and your Scottish music and your dancing and everything. So no, it was very nice, great honour and great privilege, and very proud.
Tremendous, very well done. The time's come when we probably need to move on and talk a bit about Burns, and I've deliberately not asked you any more questions about your music, because I think we'll get on to that while we're talking about Burns. So I'll get Jim to start that conversation.
John, simple question as always at the start. How did you get started with Burns?
Do you know, I was maybe a late starter with Robert Burns, because I don't think we got Burns at the school. Maybe the week of Burns, 25th of January, maybe a couple of poems or a plate of haggis for your lunch. That was about it in my day. I can't remember there being a Burns competition or anything. My mum was involved with the church, and I was asked to sing. I love singing, sung for years. And I was asked to sing at a Burns supper they had in the church. Now, I was maybe only 15, 16 at the time. And the occasion was more exciting than the actual subject. To be going to an event where you were hearing Wilson Ogilvie, or you've got here Donald Urquhart, Joe Campbell, the Reverend James Curry, the first 2 or 3 years, and I don't know if that was naivety or if I was being immature, but I went to Burns Supper 16, 17, 18, 19, they're all, but Burns didn't really mean a lot to me. It was more that I was there. Am I going to sing in pitch? Am I going to get the right words? And I was concentrating too much on myself. I would come home and my mum and dad would say, oh, what was the speaker like the night? And I couldn't really tell them because I hadn't concentrated too much. And I don't know if it was by fate that I was at a Burns supper, and it was at Palmerston Park, and it was the social club. So, I mean, there was the worthies that were there every week for their game of bingo and their dancing and that. And they were having this Burns supper, and I was invited to sing. Now, we won a book in the raffle, and it was a biography of Burns by Mackay. And I started to read that, and from then on, I started to get interested in Burns, and I hope that's coming across the way. And to start with, just getting invited to a gig was more important than Burns supper, Whereas when I then found it really, and I thought, well, Kent was born and when he died, but a wee bits and pieces in between. And after that, I really took to it. When I went to Burn Supper, I could tell you nearly everything they said because I was listening more, I was concentrating more on what they said. So although I'd been at Burn Suppers for 2 or 3 years, I'd say it was in my early 20s before I really grasped what Robert Burns was, and then really got into it as in listening. I mean, I don't think I've got into it like some people where I research, because I sing the songs of Burns. I wouldn't just stand up and sing a song without maybe having looked for the 2 or 3 notes that I can give a preamble. So I could tell you 1 or 2 things about the songs I sing, but I couldn't tell you. I've listened to Chris Rowley and the Border Tours and David Purdy giving the great lectures about Burns, and they're all brilliant. I couldn't do that because I'm no eminent enough or qualified enough. But so I stuck to the songs. So that's how I really got into it, and I hope that came across the way that is that being naive, or was that being just immature, that for 2 or 3 Burn Suppers was just a gig for me?
I would actually describe it as being very lucky, given the folk that you've listed, because some of them are nowheres anymore, and I have great memories. Curry, for example, I mean, just a wonderful, wonderful speaker. But I mean, you must have been at, I don't know how many, hundreds of Burn Suppers over the years. Are you any favourites?
I do have favourites that I can remember, that, as I said right away at the very beginning, everything I am asked to is important to me. And I was talking to Douglas on the phone the other week there. Now, I was president of the Burns House Club in 2009. That was year of homecoming. And they had a Burn Supper in the Scottish Parliament. And I was fortunate to be there. Now, Alex Ferguson was the presiding officer. And I'd been at lots of Burn Suppers that Alex Ferguson did Immortal Memories. So I kind of got to know him on a personal level. And I was there. Now, there was, different people, kind of high commissioners for here, speakers for there, loads of MSPs, MPs, lords, ladies, and me, this wee boy for Dumfries, sitting there saying to Douglas, there was mere cutlery at my position, and they're putting my cutlery drawer down the stairs with all the different courses that we were getting up. Now, that was a great night. Len Murray did the Immortal Memory that was just second to none. A couple of the toast and reply to the lasses was 2 of the MSPs. And yes, that was one of the best. But you can, the next day, I was at the lunch club at Lochmaben with 20 folk in the wee porter cabin with David Shankland. And that was every bit as good and every bit. And although that was a favourite that I would pick out, when I look back in my book, everywhere I went, the year I was president, they were all important, and they were all, and there is favourite. I mean, I've been a member of the House. We've had some great nights in the House, in the Globe, and I've been at other places. And some of the wee village halls can have some great nights. And Joe Campbell, I remember, asked me to go into Southerners one year to the golf club, but I went down there, and it was quite funny. They hadn't a seat for me, and I'm not that type of person that needs to be sat at the top table. And myself and the guy that was playing the accordion that night, we were stuck in the fire exit, and we were absolutely frozen. And then we come in against the mules by, and we done our turn. But I mean, where I sit in the halls, no anything of importance. And so there's loads of memories, and I don't know, maybe that one at the Parliament really was my favourite, but they're all favourites really, because I wouldn't have gone if I didn't like them.
It must have been a very interesting year for you as president of the House Club in 2009.
It was indeed, because there was lots of celebrations. And so I used to go to the House Club, and I always laughed with David Smith, the honorary secretary, and Dan Cook was the treasurer at the time, because everybody that did a turn, if you weren't a club member, got a bottle. Well, I didn't drink, still didn't drink to this day. And they thought, oh gosh, what will I get? Well, I gave him a token. I said, look, I'm not wanting anything. I'm just honoured to be here. So David always used to say, we could make you a member, and then we'll no need to buy you a bottle of whiskey. So I became a member of the club. But I mean, I sung at the Burns House for many years, and then was initially elected onto the committee. And on the committee, say, can we like take you through as the junior vice president, maybe, oh, well, I've considered it. And I thought, yes. And then as it worked up and it came, and it was a busy year. I did loads of things. And you maybe to be on your mettle because you were invited, because you were president of the club, you were invited to speak at the women's rurals about Robert Burns. Now, they weren't wanting something too heavy or that. And then the next day, all the young farmers are wanting you to come and speak at their Burns supper. Well, they were there just for the drink, but using maybe the name of Robert Burns. So to be kind of light-hearted, and then you were maybe invited because it was all the Southern Scottish Counties Burns group, and you were there as the president, you today your speech. So it was great. And then there was other wee things. We brought a book out, getting all the Waynes locally to write poems, and we brought the book out, the Wee Kiss to Verse, I think it was named. So that was great. There were lots of things went on, but it was a great year, and especially with all the commemorations. I was very fortunate and lucky that I got invited to all these things. I've got a book there that I wrote down, and I think I had 330 engagements that year as president of the club. And I mean, that was whether it was just to go into the Globe to welcome a group of folk and then hand them across to Jane Brown, or whether it was to go and sing yin songs standing outside the Burns Film Theatre before the Japanese went in to watch a film or something like that. But they were all noted down, and it was a great honour to be president in that particular year.
Yeah, first love is obviously music, and I can't let you escape without you talking about Burns songs.
I love music, and I love song, and I love Burns' song. Sometimes, I mean, the words were Burns, the tunes were other people's, we know that. And I remember somebody said to me at a Burns supper, and I could have took offence if I was that type, but I know. Somebody says, we didn't enjoy your singing, you weren't lively enough. And I says, well, I could have told you that before I came, because I'm a ballad singer. Now, I'll listen to you, Jacobites by Name, and think it's great. And I listen to Killiecrankie and Macpherson's Lament, and a lot of these boys do it really well. But I didn't sing that type of thing. I would prefer to sing Afton Water. I'd prefer to sing A Fond Kiss, the Craigieburn Wood, the Braes of Allochmyle, the Last. These are the songs I sing. So if that woman had said to me, oh, we're looking for somebody to come to the Burns supper to sing lively songs, I wouldn't have went, because it's no that I didn't like them, but it's just because of the ballady type things that I sing that I like to. Sometimes it's the tune that appeals to me, and then the words. Now, I mentioned right at the beginning, I'm self-taught as a singer. I've not had any training, but it's this telling the story. And I like louds and I like softs, and if there's words to express, I mean, I always think the last verse, A Fond Kiss, here alas, well, it's the last time, just pump that out, let them ken, so you maybe can, A Fond Kiss and then be severed, farewell, alas, forever. And then I'm trying to tell the story there rather than just and I'm like that with all the songs that I sing. I look at the words and I look at them, and maybe the professional trained singers and that'll say he's got it all wrong, but it's done me well over the years, and I'll continue as long as I can.
Well, I've heard you singing in quite a number of occasions, but I'll never forget the first time I heard you. It was at a Burns conference. And if you think you're going out of here without me getting you to sing a song of some kind, I mean, I'd love Afton Water or A Fond Kiss or whatever you want. Oh,
well, that's a shock. Aye, come on, why no? Well, newcomer at Burns Club, I'll maybe give you a verse of Afton Water. Would that be okay?
That'd be lovely.
Flow gently, sweet Afton, among thy green braes. Flow gently, I sing thee a song in thy praise. My Mary's asleep by thy marble stream. Flow gently, sweet Afton, disturb not her dream. thou stopped up whose echo resounds through the glen. Ye wild whistling blackbirds in yon formy glen. Thou green crested lapwing, thy screaming forbear. I charge you disturb not my slumbering fair. How lofty, sweet, often thy neighboring hills are marked by thy courses of clear winding rills. There fondly I wander, which over the lea, the sweet scented bird shakes my Mary and me. Blow gently, sweet often, among thy green braes. Blow gently, I sing thee a song in thy praise. My Mary's asleep by thy murmuring stream. Flow gently, sweet, often, disturb not her dream.
That was beautiful, John.
Oh, thanks,
Absolutely
Sid.
tremendous.
Thank you very much.
Do you have a favourite song that you sing, or are they all favourites?
Oh, I change back and forward. They're all favourites, but I think if I had an all-time favourite, because I like it whether it is a song, but I like it if it's said as a poem, is A Man's a Man. And I think we hear sometimes too much about the last verse, then let us pray that come it may, and brothers be for all that, where I think the whole song, there's got something in it. I mean, I think even the first line is there for honest poverty. I think that's Burns telling us there's nothing to be ashamed about if you're in poverty. And he goes on, and I love the line in it, the honest man that erst so poor is king o' men for all that. And I think all the honest men and women, the length and breadth through our country that have done their bit. And I think in that whole song, it goes on about this, the tinsel show and all that, a prince can make a belted knife, and he looks and laughs. So I think Burns is just saying, it doesn't matter if you're in poverty, it doesn't matter if you're a lord of the land, we're all brothers for all that. And I do a wee immortal memory, and I try and get that in. That's my interpretation of the whole song, A Man's a Man. I mean, yes, brothers be for all that, but I think the brothers in all the world clasp the hand of friendship. But I think it's really Burns saying to us that it doesn't matter if you're at the top of the tree or at the bottom, making your way up, we're all important. So I think A Man's a Man would maybe be my all-time favourite. But there's some years, I mean, I sing the Braes of Ballochmyle and I just love it. And then I sing the Lass of Ballochmyle. I like them all. But I think A Man's a Man would be my all-time favourite, said either as a poem. I've heard some folk reciting it and making a great job of it with their louds and their softs and that. And then singing it can keep the folk going. But, so that, and I get back to my interpretation. I think that's sometimes where I can get frustrated at a Burns supper, at an immortal memory, because I always think the immortal memory, it's no written in stone what an immortal memory is. It's your immortal memory. So you're giving what your immortal, you're giving your interpretation. And I don't like if I think the person's lecturing me. If I'm going to hear a Burns lecture about Burns's Masonic days, or a lecture about Burns's time in Edinburgh, that's fair enough. But if I'm hearing somebody's immortal memory, I want their thoughts on Burns. And that's where I always like to try and get that word in if I'm doing the immortal memory. Mr. Chairman, this is my immortal memory. This is my thoughts. And that's where I sometimes can get a wee bit frustrated in the burn scene, which might be a wee bit controversial to some folk, but that's my opinion.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's really important. There's too often immortal memories are a bit like a history lesson. You know, Burns was born and Burns lived here and then Burns died, you know, and I think more and more I've appreciated memories where it's been someone's thoughts on Burns. But
see, when I'm doing an immortal memory, I've got, I talk mainly in the songs because I sing the songs, and I always kind of relate to 2 or 3 in particular where I think Burns and nature. And I said, you know, in my opinion, Burns was turning to nature with a broken heart. And I refer to ye banks and braes. Ye banks and braes of bonny Doon, how can ye bloom so fresh and fair? How can ye chant, ye little birds? And I'm so weary, full of care. Burns has got a broken heart in his questioning nature. And similar in the braes of Ballochmyle, though in the wintry beds ye flowers, again you'll flourish fresh and fair. Ye birdies dim and withering bowers, again you'll charm the vocal air. But here, alas, for me, nae mair shall birdies charm or flowers sing. To me, that's Burns' question in nature. He's hearing that Maria Whiteford's leaving the farm next door at Mosgiel, and therefore he's, I can't cope with this, and he turns to nature, and I try and get that in. That's my interpretation. That's what I try and get in with immortal memories, and then go on and mention some of the other things in his life. And there is, because the Braes of Ballochmyle, the Craigieburn Wood, the Banks, they've all got that in it for me, where he's questioning nature with a broken heart. And again, there may be some people in Burns that's a load of nonsense, but that's my thoughts on these songs.
Yeah, and it's important that it's your interpretation. And you probably heard me say on these podcasts before, I greatly believe that Burns is such a wide church that everybody should be able to take something from it and have their own opinion on what Burns has brought to them.
Yes. I mean, one of Jim mentioned earlier about favourites and memories. Across the back here, there was a wee village hall in Kipton, and they had a Burns supper every year. And it was run by the SNP, because the local councillor that was a member of the hall. Now, in the hall, there was the table with the Labour Party councillors and the Tory Party councillors, and it was non-political in any way. It was only to raise funds for the party. And further up the valley at Dulswinton, they run a Burns supper with the Conservative Association. And again, you went in there, and I sang at both of them, and you had the SNP table and the Labour table, and that was just Burns. It was there for everybody. Now, there is some people who didn't want to be political, but there is some people who want to claim him as his, but that's their kind of interpretation. But that just showed you in these things that it was for everybody, and it brought everybody together. And they could be in the council chambers in the afternoon arguing black was white with one another, but then at night they're at a Burns supper having a great night, and it was Robert Burns that brought them together, no other debate in the council chambers.
Jim, we're getting to the end of our time, and we're keen to get John to give us another song. Is there anything else we want to talk about before we ask him to do that?
No, as I said earlier, I'd be quite happy to spend the interview just listening to the man sing. It's just been a pleasure for me. For the first time I heard you, it was a Burns conference, and I just love your voice. And what I find mesmerising, if I can give you a compliment, it's no affected. You just stand up and sing. Do you know there's? Do you know it's just there, and it's a talent that you've been God-given, obviously, and you make the best use of it. And I appreciate why you got the MBA, because I know the work you do in the community. And again, the community, thank you for that.
Well, that's very kind of you to say that, Jim. Thank you very much. I go back to what I said right at the very beginning. When I first started getting these Burns suppers, I was young, I was raw, and the occasion was more important to me, that I had to get it right. as years have went on, I've got more experience because I'm doing a lot more and all the rest of it. So I can listen. But before, the speakers were up singing, and I was very young, 19, 20. The speaker was up singing, and I'm saying, dance and praise, and thinking that I'm a guy to get it, and making sure I do the words right. Whereas now, I'm standing there applauding the singers. Oh God, I'm on next, and then just belt it. Where that, as I say, that is experience. And I mean, I'm singing here now, just where I normally have my accompanist with me, whether it's somebody on the piano or my accordionist friend Willie that would play. But as I say, I just love entertaining, love singing, and I think it's a great honour to be asked to sing at any Burns supper. And I'm one of these that the first in my diary, if I'm free and I want to go to it, I'm there. And maybe something will come out and I'll say, oh, I'm sorry. I double booked one year and I was absolutely distraught. And it was fate I managed to do them both, because one was an early start and the others was a kind of farmer thing. They weren't starting to 9 o'clock. So I got to the first one, had the meal and sang, and then I drove to the other and missed the meal, but I was there in time to do the entertaining. So although I double booked, I managed to fit them both in, and that was great. And normally, I've always the first booking in the diary, and it can be a wee Burns thing at the local women's guild with 25 women there. Could you come and get a wee talking Burns and 2 or 3 songs? If somebody will phone me, I've got to be 200 there. It's been a great night, but the guild phoned first, so that's where I'm going. And I've always been like that, and always hope to be like that.
It's a great way to be. I think Angus Middleton is exactly the same. You mentioned Angus earlier on. He always goes to the first one in his diary.
Mm-hmm.
So we're near the end of the episode, John. Would you do us the honour of giving us another song?
I'll give you a favourite song of mine now, Craigieburn Wood. There's lots of versions. I mean, I think there are lots of great folk versions of this, but I heard the actual tune that I use for Joe Gordon and Sally Logan. I'm friendly with her son. Joe's no longer with us, but I'm friendly with her son, Scott, and Scott gave me the music, and that's the music I sing use for I sing the Craigieburn Wood. And it's maybe one of the lesser known songs of Burns, but I think it's awfully bonny, and I'll have a wee go at that now. Sweet falls the eve on Craigieburn, and blithe awakes the morrow, but all the dead in spring's return can yield me naught but sorrow. I see the flowers, the spreading trees, I hear the wild birds singing, but pleasures they name for me, while care my heart is wringing. Ye cannot tell, ye maunna tell, ye darna for your anger, but secret love would break my heart if ye conceal it longer. To see the end, another's ends in love, till lie and languish. 'Twould rare be deed than would be seen. My heart it bursts wi' anguish. O Jeannie, say thou will be mine, say thou lose nae up for me, and all the days o' life to come, I gratefully adore thee, I gratefully adore thee.
That was tremendous, John. Absolutely beautiful. Who was it who wrote that song for?
Chorus.
Yeah, thought so. He wrote quite a lot for Chloris, didn't he?
22. He wrote more for Chloris than he wrote for Gina Armour. But again, there's a secondary concept to that. It's about Jessie Lure's brother. He was trying to get her halfway, hit him half the Chloris.
That was absolutely tremendous, John. Thank you very much for that.
As I said, there is lots of versions of that in a folky where they use a kind of chorus and they keep going back to it, and it's great. Emily Smith is a great, Ian Bruce, they're all doing a great. But me being the kind of ballady singer that I am, and that's the one that I like, and it goes down quite well when I sing it at Burn Suppers. Yeah. It's great.
Well, that was just tremendous. I think even though you're going to be in huge demand when the COVID restrictions are off for presumably next year's Burn Suppers, I think you could expect some requests from people that you don't know that are going to be watching this, because that was just tremendous.
Well, thank you very much. And as I said at the very beginning, thank you to yourself and Jim for asking me to come on. And not just for me coming on here, but thank you for what you're doing, because it's been hard for a lot of folk, and just to have something is great. And more power to your elbows, and well done, guys. You're doing a great job.
Thanks very much, John. And thanks very much for giving up your time to tell us about your life with Robert Burns. Thanks, John.
Thank you.